Welcome to today's webinar on the future of work, hot jobs and industry trends from the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics. My name is Alexandra Stevens, and I'm coming at you from the Hiatt Career Center at Brandeis University, and I'll be moderating today's discussion with our wonderful presenter, Tim Consedine, who is a regional economist for the Bureau of Labor Statistics New England office. And so before turning it over to Tim, I'll just share a little bit about his background with all of you. So Tim has served within the Economic Analysis and Information branch of the Bureau since June 2002. And prior to joining the branch, he served as an economist within the Division of Labor Force Statistics of the Bureau's headquarters located in Washington, D.C. Tim's research concerns the changing patterns emerging within the U.S. labor market and analyses of the New England regional economy. He's published articles summarizing annual employment and unemployment data with a particular focus on industry employment trends occurring within New England. His most recent research has focused on shifts in high-tech employment and wage trends in Massachusetts since the dot-com bubble. He also holds 2 master's degrees in law and public policy and applied economics, both from Northeastern University. And we're so excited to have him with us today to talk us through the numbers, but how we can also apply that to trends in the workforce today in our own careers. So Tim, welcome to you.
Thank you, Alexandra. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm very excited to impart the highlights of our updated employment projections, 2016 to 2026. And I think these data will give you some good insights into the hot and not so hot jobs that we expect over the next 10 years. And we're going to be focusing on growth by occupation and industry. And I'm also going to provide some overview of other career resources available from the Bureau that you should be aware of that will arm you with good information for making career decisions. You know, and the old adage is knowledge is power, right? So, you know, by the end, I hope you'll have a sounder grasp of what BLS expects in terms of job growth by occupation and industry and other tools available for you when making good career decisions. And I'm just going to advance to the next slide here. And so this is an overview of what I plan to discuss. You know, if you have any burning questions during the presentation, don't hesitate to reach out. I believe Alexandra will be able to, you know, receive those. But at the end, we'll have about 15 minutes to answer any questions as well. So I'll cover some background information about the Employment Projections Program, touching on its uses and the overarching process that we use to develop the estimates. I'll also discuss the results of the 2016-2026 projections, focusing on growth by industry and occupation. And then finally, I'll provide some additional background on resources to help you make career decisions, including our wage data from the Occupational Employment Statistics Program and some other career planning resources you should be aware of. So a little bit about the employment projections. We produce them every other year, and we're projecting out growth for the next decade. So the latest projections are for 2016 to 2026, and those were released in December of 2017. Our next set of projections for 2018 to 2028, those will be released in December of 2019. BLS does not project interim years, except for labor force projections. So our estimates, you know, are covered out through 10-year period and then averaged evenly across all 10 years. And another chart will demonstrate that a little bit better. The 2016-2026 projections cover over 800 occupations and over 300 industries. And you should note the states also produce state and area projections, which are funded by our sister agency, the U.S. Department of Employment and Training Administration, ETA. And the data that I'll be presenting are on a national scope only, but are used as an input to the state projections. So who uses our projections? Well, many people. career counselors and students making career choice decisions, job seekers looking to switch jobs or find work. State education and program planners use this information for developing job training programs through the public-private workforce investment system to try to improve outcomes for both labor and employers. And researchers are interested in using our data and determining how the economy is changing. Okay, so I just want to slow down here and just kind of talk about the 6 steps that are used in the overarching process to develop the estimates. And you can see on the chart the 6 icons, and I'll go through those in I guess it's clockwise order here. The first step is the BLS projects the composition of the labor force by demographic. And by demographic, I mean the concentrations of labor force by ethnicity or race or age. And the labor force is the sum total number of employed plus the unemployed. So this is your available labor pool to fill job openings and over the decade. And the labor force projections are determined by projections in population, which are produced by our colleagues in the U.S. Census Bureau. And it may be intuitive to you that population serves as a constraint on employment growth. So that's the first step. The second step is we use a macroeconomic model to predict the growth in demand. Okay, so we're projecting growth in gross domestic product, which for those of you who have taken economics classes may recall the equation, how we measure growth in the aggregate demand. Consumption, spending, investment, net exports, and government spending. So we're using a macroeconomic model to project the growth in demand. And those final demand categories are disaggregated in terms of sales to consumers across all industries to project final demand across industries. That's the third step. And we're also using, in the fourth step, input-output models, which are developed by our colleagues in the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which are measuring the inputs supplied by supplying industries to produce final outputs produced by other industries, and that exerts an impact on employment. So that's a fourth step. And in the fifth step, we're calculating final demand and calculating what employment will be needed to furnish that level of demand across different industries. And we're adjusting that as a function of wages, prices, time, and also productivity. You know, as workers become more productive or processes become more productive, you may need less employees. So that's the idea there. And the last step in the process is using occupational staffing patterns. We're able to distribute growth in employment by industry across occupations, and we'll display some slides to present our expectations on employment growth. And the example that I've used before is, for example, if we expect a 10% growth in the demand for hospital services, and in the base year, hospitals employ 100 employees, where 60% of those employees are registered nurses and 40% are physicians. And with a 10% growth in the demand for outputs produced by this industry, we'd expect a 10% growth in the employment level, 110, over the projections period. So with the distributions of jobs within that industry remaining fixed, we would need 66 registered nurses and 44 physicians to meet that demand. That's the idea. So here we have our slide to kind of hammer home that point. And so suppose that it takes 2 economists in the base period to produce 4 research reports demanded in the economy. All else remaining equal, if we expect a 100% increase in the demand for research reports over the projections period, how many economists will be required to meet that level of demand? And I think Alexandria can initiate a poll question reflecting that information.
Yes, absolutely. So the question being, how many economists are expected to meet future demand in this example? 2, 4, 6, or none of the above? And so if you just take a second to weigh in on the poll on your screen right now, we'll see who was paying attention during their Brandeis economics classes. Thank you all for weighing in. I'll give you a couple more seconds and then hand it back over to Tim. Okay, so it looks like most people have voted. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the quiz results. So Tim, it looks like 63% of folks thought that 4 economists would be needed. 20% or so thought none of the above. 13% said 6, and a couple said 2. But majority said 4. What's our answer here?
So, yeah, thanks for your input. I'm just going to advance to the next slide, and the answer is 4 economists. And, you know, I appreciate the responses. And you know, we're not adjusting for like differences in productivity that may occur over time, or what economists are earning, because those have impact on the number of employees that industries will hire to meet that level of demand. So, but the answer that we were looking for here is 4 economists, all things remaining equal. So. Hopefully that concept makes more sense, but that's the idea, and it looks like you know, many of you are tracking there. And if you have questions at the end, you know, just feel free to shout out, and we'll have time at the end. So steps 3, 4, and 5 of the projections process deal with industry demand, output by industry, and employment by industry. So the next few slides are going to highlight the results of our 2016-2026 projections. So here you have a series of bars reflecting employment levels. And I should point you to the blue areas of these bars, and those reflect non-agricultural wage and salary employees. So that excludes the self-employed, folks who are perhaps working under the table. You may refer to them as those in the gig economy, perhaps, that are not tracked by formal payrolls covered under the state unemployment insurance system. So the rest of this section will focus on the non-agricultural wage and salary employment segment. And I should mention the main component of all other employment is the self-employed. So we expect non-agricultural wage and salary employment to grow at a rate of 0.7% annually compounded, which is a bit faster than the 0.6% compound annual rate that occurred over the 2006-2016 period. So we project non-agricultural wage and salary employment to add over 10.7 million jobs and to reach 155.7 million in 2026. And hopefully my mouse shows, and that's, you know, the level that we're expecting there. All other employment is expected to add about 779,000 jobs over the projections period to reach about 11.9 million in 2026, which adds up to the 167,600,000 figure at the top of that chart. So we're expecting better than average growth in the last projections period. So here's a trend line reflecting the growth in total non-farm, non-agricultural wage and salary employment, or total non-farm payroll employment. And note that we can't predict variations in the business cycle over the 10 years. So the projected growth is spread evenly across all 10 years of the projections period. Looking back through time, those blue rectangles reflect periods of economic recession. So the last major recession was the Great Recession that occurred December 2007 to June 2009. And that had an impact on employment, as you can see from the downward movement of the total non-farm trend line. And again, the job count is projected to rise from 145 million in 2016 to more than 155.7 million, an increase of over 10.7 million jobs over the projections period. This increase is larger than the 7.8 million jobs that were added from 2006 to 2016, and of course the recession had some impact on that. So here's a cross-section of employment by industry sector as of 2016. And you can see that of any of the industries, professional and business services represents the largest portion of jobs in the economy. And these jobs are staffed by legal professions, accounting, also architecture and engineering services, but it also includes your administrative types of functions, including temporary help, supply services. The second most staffed sector is state and local government, approximately 20 million jobs in that sector, and that includes your public schools and your public hospitals, which is a high share of employment. I want to point out manufacturing. The red bars are affiliate with goods producing sectors of the economy. Manufacturing represents the sixth most staffed industry in the country, but in terms of output, it ranks first. This industry tends to be very highly productive. I'll note educational and health services, educational services and healthcare and social assistance. The third from the top, and educational services is the fifth from the bottom. Only include your private sector establishments, schools and private sector hospitals, and I should note that. And I'm advancing the slides here. Maybe I just got to click into the slide again, and there we go. Okay, so here we have two bar charts reflecting employment growth across industries and the resulting employment level changes over the projections period. And so the first set of bars are in descending order. And you can see that across all industries, we expect the fastest growth to occur within the healthcare and social assistance sector. So these include your hospitals, nursing homes, ambulatory care facilities, doctors' offices, dentist offices, as well as community and social service activities. And we expect fast growth there. Manufacturing, on the other hand, is expected to exhibit the slowest growth, actually a decline, a shrinkage, negative 0.6% over the projections period. And you can see there's a dotted line vertically through the center, which represents the average growth rate across all industries we expect over the projections period. So you can see which industries are above average in terms of growth and which are below. Healthcare and social assistance, which in addition to being the fastest growing sector across the projections period, is expected to add the highest level of jobs over the projections period. Nearly 4 million jobs. And as we noted, 10.7 million jobs in non-agricultural wage and salary employment. So that's over a third of the growth in employment. So healthcare and social assistance is an area of expected growth and opportunity. Mining employment is projected to have the second fastest growing rate of growth at 1.4%. Educational services, which is made up of private institutions, is the third fastest growing sector, 1.3%, although in terms of net jobs, educational services only adds the sixth most level of jobs because this sector is a bit smaller. So we'll talk about those concepts, the growth rates compared with net growth a little bit further in the presentation, but we want to highlight those. And manufacturing is the sector projected to see the largest percent decline, as well as the largest level of change, downward change across industries. And this is a function of increased productivity within the sector, reliance on robotics, for example, as well as perhaps factors from international trade, increased reliance on imports. That's having impact on this industry.
Tim, I have a quick question for you, just about the industry list here. What does information mean in terms of industry?
Information includes activities that inform the public, like newspaper publishing, periodical publishing, but it also includes software publishing.
Great, thank you.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, if we dug into the information sector, you could see probably diverging trends within certain subsectors within information, and that's an excellent point. That you know, there can be differences in movements within the underlying categories within these main categories, but you know, we see growth in you know, like web portals, for example, like your functions in Google, or you know, things like that within the information category, but not so much growth in newspaper publishing. People are relying on different forms of mediums to get their information. Subject to your questions, I'll advance. So here we have a trend line for the construction industry, and this is the fourth fastest growing sector across all sectors presented, and will add the fourth most new jobs over the projections period. And this projected growth reflects a rebound from the housing bust that occurred around the recession period of 2007 to 2009. The construction sector, nonetheless, is projected to reach the number of, construction sector is almost projected to reach the number of jobs it had before the onset of the housing bust around 2006. So we expect construction employment to be fairly robust, reaching 7.7 millions of jobs. Yeah, 7,600,000 jobs over the projections period. Okay. In terms of manufacturing, we expect continued declines in manufacturing. From 2000 to 2010, manufacturing employment, as you can see, suffered significant losses. In fact, from 2006 to 2010, it lost 18.2% of its employment. So we expect continued job loss to occur for the reasons we've kind of highlighted in terms of increased productivity and reliance on international trade. But should note that we expect the manufacturing decline to slow over this projections period at an annual rate of 0.6%. And this was a bit lower than what was projected to decline in the 2014-2024 cycle of 0.7%. And this is due to the recent increases that you see there over the recent past. Healthcare and social assistance, in contrast, is expected to continue to increase over the 10-year projections period. And you may be familiar with the baby boom population. So these are folks that were born between 1947 and 1963. And you know, the oldest baby boomers will be approaching 69 at the start of the projections period of 2016. So all things remaining equal, this glut of population in the economy is going to exert higher demand for healthcare services due to chronic conditions. You know, my father is in this group here, so, and I you know, he's going to the hospital, you know, more than I am, I guess, you know, which is good from my perspective, but maybe not his, but that's just a function of getting old. And so, you know, we expect higher demands in the healthcare field to provide such services, and that's a reason for that growth. And you can see, you know, approaching 23.1 million jobs by the end of the projections period there, millions of jobs. All right, subject to your questions, I'll start to talk. Yeah.
Tim, just a quick question before you move on. You mentioned mining is another industry that's increasing. Do you have a reason for that?
I don't have in my notes, but I can follow up with whomever is interested with further details if I can get the contact information and follow up.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, not sure what the reasons are for that one, but I can certainly follow up. So thank you for your question. as we learned earlier in the presentation, based on available occupational staffing patterns that the Bureau has, we're able to distribute growth in employment across industries by occupation. You should note that we define occupations by similarity of knowledge, of skills, and the functions brought to the job to meet industry demands. And we're using a standard occupational classification system to categorize workers by occupation. So the next few slides will highlight some results of the 2016-2026 projections. So occupational growth can be viewed in one of two ways. We can look at numeric employment change, and that's sometimes referred to as net change. And so in this example, we see home health aides, which is a detailed occupation, which is expected to add 431,200 jobs over the projections period. Compared with wind turbine service technicians, which is expected to add 5,600 jobs over the projections period. And you can see that the rate of growth on the right-hand side of the bar chart is much slower for home health aides, 47.3%, than it is for wind turbine service technicians, 96.3%. But nonetheless, the slower growth rate within home health aides is going to result in a great many more jobs in the economy just because of its larger size. And you can also see that reflected with waiters and waitresses, 182,500 jobs expected over the projections period, or resulting in a 7% growth rate. A lower growth rate than the wind turbine service technicians field, but resulting in many more jobs just because of its size. So, it's important to understand those concepts when viewing our employment projections numbers, so you have a better idea of, opportunities and what's happening. So hopefully that makes sense, and we'll have a poll question to test your understanding. So here's a cross-section of employment by occupation. As of 2016, we had a cross-section of employment by industry, where we saw professional and business services was heavily concentrated. And these are based on our standard occupational classification system. And by far, most jobs are concentrated within the office and administrative support field. And you can kind of maybe relate that these types of positions are found in many different operations, just because of the support needs that are needed and provided by these workers. But you can see also the distribution across different types of jobs that are reflected here in our data. In terms of jobs that aren't very robustly staffed, farming, fishing, and forestry jobs are the least staffed in our country. And this is due to increased productivity in the field and less reliance on manpower to produce our nation's food. So here's a bar chart presenting employment growth rates across occupations in descending order. And healthcare support occupations across all occupations are projected to grow the fastest across any of the occupational categories at 23.6%. And additionally, employment of healthcare practitioners and technical jobs are expected to add a heavy pace of jobs at 15.3%. And also personal care and service occupations are expected to grow at a robust clip. And all of these jobs are driven by the functions that I had mentioned earlier: an increasing elder population and increased reliance on the functions and skills brought by these positions. And especially healthcare support include licensed practical nursing and other fields. Healthcare practitioners and technical include like anesthesiologists and physicians and things like that. And personal care and service occupations, you may ask, what's included there? That's composed of various types of positions, but one of the highly staffed positions is personal care aides within that field. And these are folks that provide, day-to-day, household assistance for the elderly, like maybe food shopping or perhaps cleaning activities. That particular occupation is projected to grow 38.6% and represents a large share of occupations within this field. So that's what's driving the growth within that in that area. Also, I should note, community and social service occupations is expected to grow 14.5% over the projections period, and these include counselors, social workers, and religious workers. And you can see the growth in construction and extraction jobs. Again, there's a yellow dotted line through the middle of the bars, which reflect the average growth across all occupations. And so, like in the previous example, by industry, you can see, which occupations are growing faster than average. Here are jobs that are expected to grow not as fast or below the national average. And again, you see production jobs, which are heavily staffed within manufacturing activities, is actually projected to shrink by 4.3% over the projections period. In terms of net growth, we have that concept now under our belts. We expect healthcare practitioners and technical occupations to add the most new jobs over the projections period, over 1.3 million new jobs. And this is due to its relatively large size and the increase in demand for the services provided by such workers and the industries that staff such workers. And you can see that 3 of the top 4 jobs where we expect the highest growth in terms of net employment are related to the healthcare field. I'll just kind of leave it up there so you can kind of digest where we see the most jobs. Here are the remaining occupations that we track in terms of what we expect in net employment growth. And you can see production occupations, in addition to its shrinkage in terms of rates of growth, the resulting net employment level, 406,900 jobs is what we expect there for the various reasons mentioned. And farming, fishing, and forestry occupations are expected to almost remain fixed over the projections period for the reasons that we mentioned there. So here's a chart reflecting growth rates and resulting employment net change for detailed occupations. So the previous slides kind of reflect general occupational categories, but this is reflecting our more detailed occupational categories. The positions on the left side are in descending order. And also you see the median annual wages paid for such positions, and these are based on May 2017 Occupational Employment Statistics Program estimates, which I'll mention at the end of the presentation. You can see solar photovoltaic installers is a job that we expect to exhibit the fastest growth, 105% growth over the projections period, but only resulting in a small amount of net new jobs, 11,800 due to its smaller size. And you also see that for wind turbine service technicians, a relatively fast growth, and but resulting in a relatively small amount of new jobs. And does anybody know why that could be occurring in wind turbine service technicians employment? I'm not sure, Alexandra. Anybody can speak up on the phone? I don't know.
Yeah, just through text. So if anyone can chat what they think the answer is, I can share it with you, but that's about it.
Okay. Well, it's
federal
kind of,
funding was one of the answers.
Oh, yeah. What's happening is we saw a 10-fold increase in wind energy industry employment over the prior projections period over the last 10 years. And with these trends remaining consistent, we expect high growth in the wind turbine service technician field because there's going to be a demand for the services provided by these workers to refurbish aging infrastructure. So that's what's kind of driving for that. And you see 5 occupations on this chart on the left-hand side: home health aides, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, physical therapist assistants, and then again personal care aides. Those jobs are related to the healthcare field and to the aging demographic. That's what's affecting that. 8 of these occupations made more than the median annual wage of $37,690 for all occupations, which is interesting to note. Here we have 2 bar charts reflecting employment net growth across detailed occupations relative to the employment growth rates. And the positions on the left by net growth are listed in descending order. And we also have the earnings associated with these positions. And you can see a good many of the healthcare positions not only are growing fast, but adding a lot of jobs. Home health aides, registered nurses, personal care aides. So you begin to see the theme there. And some of the others that are expected to add a large amount of jobs in relation to other detailed occupations. I should mention population growth is leading to a demand for more food outside of the home, which is impacting the combined food preparation and serving workers category, including fast food. That's a factor that's driving that. And registered nurses, software developers, applications, and general and operations managers made more than the median annual wage of $37,690 recorded in May of 2017. Many occupations are in decline, and why do occupations go out of vogue? Well, it could be a change in business practices. Nobody needs a shoe. What is it? The folks that used to put horseshoes on horses, blacksmiths. We don't need those anymore, right? So you're seeing impact on different jobs in the economy due to changes in business practices, increases in automation. Locomotive firers is a job that we project to lose the most in terms of percentage change. These are folks that are involved in railroad operations, but you can see some of the others there. But again, even a healthy rate of decline may not result in a huge impact on the net number of jobs staffed by the position because of its size. So keep that in mind. But you can see some of the others where we expect rapid decline in terms of employment, and you can see the expected wages there. All right, so we talked about employment growth concepts in terms of net employment change versus rates of change. So this slide presents job openings concepts, all right? And so job openings can occur due to 3 functions, which are exits from the workforce, and those can occur due to permanent exits like a retirement or perhaps a transfer from a position to another position, as well as growth in the job. New workers coming on board to a position because of growth. And so you want to convey the concept that you're going to have a degree of incumbent workers that are going to march along during the projections period that aren't going to move that we expect, but you're going to have some transitions within the field that we expect through our methodologies that impact on our projections. And so the yellow bar of the right bar in the chart reflects workers who filled positions vacated by incumbents, and the green area reflects new workers who filled newly created positions. So that's just kind of a conceptual chart there. I don't think it actually measures any data, but just so you understand our job openings statistics. So I'll just mention an additional source of occupational openings are positions that didn't exist in the current year, which are instead occupational openings that are due to growth. And most of the openings are due to transitions, not necessarily due to growth. And here's an an example that kind of will convey that point maybe better. So this chart breaks out openings due to permanent exits from the labor force, transfers to other positions, and growth. And these figures are for registered nurses. And we saw healthy growth within registered nurses. And you see here in terms of job openings, 69,000 job openings from occupational transfers within the position, 90,000 due to labor force exits, maybe more experienced workers leaving the position, create opportunities, and also due to demand growth, 43,800 openings. Please note these are annual average figures over the 10-year projections period. The numbers are in thousands of occupational openings there, 69,000. And occupational openings due to separations outnumber openings due to growth because most occupations can expect to have higher rates of labor force exits and occupational transfers than growth over the projections period. But you can see that there's a healthy number of job openings within the registered nurses field related to growth relative to other positions there. So you sum these three components will give you the total job openings for different positions. And so this is reflecting total occupational openings for registered nurses, and it's measuring thousands of occupational openings on an annual average basis. So 203,700 openings each year from 2016 to 2026. Okay, here's a bar chart presenting job openings across occupations in descending order on an annual average basis. Openings are due to both employment growth and separations, and also we have the corresponding annual wages, median annual wages. That's the 50th percentile for any occupational distribution. So 50% of workers in combined food preparation and serving workers, including fast food, are earning more than 20,180, and 50% are earning less. And you can see all of these occupations are expected to add more jobs from occupational separations than due to employment growth. And of these occupations, none make more than the median annual wage of 37,690. So this is a good opportunity to kind of parse out, positions by openings and also employment growth, which were reflected on earlier slides. So even in positions that are expected to decline, you'll still have job openings just because of attrition, right, within the occupation, like people getting older and leaving the position. So keep that in mind. I should mention, retail salespersons and cashiers. Many of the occupational separations result from younger workers transitioning out of the position, maybe into, due to higher schooling and that kind of thing. For other occupations such as personal care aides, a heavy proportion is due to retirements, labor force exits. Okay, since I'm speaking to, yeah.
Tim, quick question. Just in terms of those numbers, do they incorporate both full and part-time employees?
Yes, yes. These numbers are including both full and part-time employees.
Thank you.
Sure. It's a good question. Yeah, so anyway, since I'm speaking to alumni of a post-secondary institution, I thought it important to highlight the Bureau's education and training classification categories. And for each of the occupations that we provide projections on, the Bureau assigns a level across the three different education and training classifications required to enter the position. And those include typical education needed for an entry. For example, do you need a bachelor's degree to typically enter that position? Or perhaps you need an associate's degree or a master's. We also categorize positions by the work experience required to successfully enter that position. And that is a function of time. So we have categories of 5 years or more, less than 5 years, or none. And then thirdly, we classify all the jobs by on-the-job training requirement. So certain positions may require an apprenticeship or an internship or a residency requirement, like registered nurses perhaps, or some kind of on-the-job training. So each of the occupations that we provide projections on have a category assigned for each of these three main classifications. And these assignments are based off both quantitative and qualitative research conducted by the Employment Projections Program. The quantitative analysis includes information gleaned from the American Community Survey, which is a Census Bureau product that is surveying households for both economic and social information, social characteristics for information. We're also getting information from ONET, which I think is, again, heavily managed by our sisters in the Employment and Training Administration within the Department of Labor, and then also the National Center for Education Statistics provides data on degree completions from U.S. post-secondary institutions by program area. And we also have qualitative feedback, based on interviews with occupational experts, such as educators, workers in the occupation, training experts, and representatives of professional and trade associations and unions. So, these are coming from good sources. And in terms of job growth by our educational and training categories, let's look at job growth figures by educational requirement. And this is a cross-section of employment by educational requirement for entry into the occupation. And you can see that 2/3 of jobs in the economy require a high school diploma or less. 61,500,000 plus 37,226,000. So of the 150 million or so jobs, a good chunk are jobs that don't require more than a high school diploma. 1/3 of the jobs in 2016, in contrast, were occupations that typically require some post-secondary education to enter, and that would be reflected from the post-secondary non-degree award bars upward. Okay, from the some college or no degree. To give you some idea of the distribution of jobs by educational requirement. And also, I want to note that higher education pays off. Wages are much higher in the bachelor's and higher degree categories, with median annual wages above $66,000 in all three categories. And occupations in the associate's degree category were paid about $50,000, and wages fall off considerably after that. So your investment in education is likely to pay off. And the median annual wage for occupations that need a high school diploma for entry was about $36,100, as reflected on the right side of the slide. However, you should note that there are higher paying occupations within all the occupations that are categorized high school diploma or equivalent, and that may be due to other training requirements, for example, on-the-job training or work experience of some type. And they note that 27 occupations within the high school diploma or equivalent category had median annual wages of more than $60,000, and all of these higher paying high school occupations require additional preparation in the form of work experience, on the job training, or both. So we want to convey that, but it gives you some idea of the distribution of jobs by education and training requirement. Occupations that typically require a master's degree for entry are projected to grow the fastest over the projections period, followed by doctoral or professional degree occupations. Occupational employment that require a post-secondary degree or award or higher education level are projected to grow faster than average. Again, there's a yellow dotted line through the middle of that bar chart, which reflects the average growth rate across all occupations. So you can see, the advantage of having a post-secondary non-degree award or higher. You may notice the asterisk there. The occupational growth rates shown in this chart include projected growth in all jobs from 2016 to 2026, not just entry-level jobs. And again, we're categorizing all our occupations using qualitative and quantitative research, across the different educational entry categories. And the entry-level education reflects 2016 requirements. We do not predict changes in educational requirements over time. The slowest growth is projected to be in occupations with typical entry-level education of some college, no degree. Only 4.2% growth there. Here's a bar chart reflecting jobs with the largest expected growth that typically require a graduate degree, master's, doctoral, or professional degree to enter the occupation. And these are detail occupations. Most of the high growth occupations in these educational categories are related to healthcare. Physical therapists, health specialties, teachers, post-secondary, nurse practitioners, physicians and surgeons. So you can see again the impact of the baby boomers and impacts in the healthcare and social assistance field on our numbers. And we also have wages associated with these positions on the right-hand side. I should mention that there are some educational categories. I'm sorry. I'll just move on there. Okay. These are the top 10 occupations with the most growth, requiring doctoral or typically requiring a doctoral professional degree to enter the occupation. 7 of these 10 occupations are related to healthcare. And we want to note that the projected increase in the number of post-secondary teachers reflects expanding college enrollments, which is occurring. And 3 post-secondary teaching occupations on this slide appear in the table. There are 3 post-secondary teaching occupations that appear on this table, post-secondary teachers. Yeah. So some of you who may be in the academic field may note, those occurrences. I'm not sure if I skipped the poll question, might be useful to interject. I think I may have skipped the poll question, Alexander. Do you want to just ask that one?
No worries.
Okay.
I think we can, just for the sake of time, skip it. We are at 12:52, and I know you have a lot more resources you want to share. So even if we can just stay on the line for a few extra minutes afterwards to answer some questions, I think that'd be great.
Sure. Thanks for keeping me on track, and be happy to do so. This is, I don't know if I showed, this is again the slide that presents the top 10 most new added jobs for those that require typically a master's degree. Again, the high growth occupations in this educational category are related to healthcare and social services. So, and I don't know if you'll share these slides with the attendees after the end, but feel free to ask, and I can provide them. These are in the public domain, and if you want to look at them. And here's for bachelor's degree occupations. Not, again, heavily influenced by the healthcare field. So the next few slides will present some resources for additional information on BLS projections. The Occupational Handbook, you really ought to be familiar with this. This is the most popular BLS publication available from our website, and it provides very interactive, user-friendly resources to gauge. I think it's over 300 occupational profiles covering more than 500 detailed occupations. It's going to provide you the expected growth in jobs for the position, how to become one, what are the education and training requirements, what the pay is for these positions, the nature of the work, very useful for students embarking on careers or people considering career changes. And it's very interactive. There's a A to Z index, which you can use, which is located on the top navigation bar so to speak, or you can just kind of plug in jobs that come to mind or research what's available on the left-hand navigation margin. We also sponsor the Career Outlook resource, which includes articles about education, careers, and BLS data. Career Outlook articles are released throughout the year, and every 2 years, the Career Outlook publishes a chart book that coincides with the release of the employment projections. And some examples of articles that appear in this publication include working in the gig economy, mapping the Hunger Games, using location quotients to find the districts of Panem. I haven't seen Hunger Games, but location quotients are measures of concentration of jobs by area. So you can see, where your opportunities to become a lawyer or, to find, positions as a lawyer, for example, may be greater than other, or for other like statisticians, something like that. As an example, from these data, you can see that about 5% of the jobs in Washington, D.C. Are filled by lawyers. That's greatly higher than anywhere across the country. So that's a resource. And then this is the website for the Employment Projections Program. We can get, soup to nuts, like technical documentation on how we derive our job openings information, migrations within jobs in terms of, permanent separations or just transitions. So I want to present to you that, and some other useful employment projection sites. We have technical documentation, the other Employment Projections Program publications, including past monthly labor review articles. That's a scholarly, journal sponsored by the Bureau that provides in-depth articles, touching on labor market issues, and then also frequently asked questions. We want to highlight state and local area projections are available. They use the national employment projections as an input to produce those estimates, and those are actually available outside of BLS at the website projectioncentral.com, and you should be aware that that's available. And I mentioned the Occupational Employment Statistics Program, the wages that were included on the right-hand navigation margin of some of the slides, and this is a very useful program, a federal state cooperative program that's collecting data from 1.2 million business establishments over a 3-year period, and it provides occupational employment and wage data for over 800 occupations in the country. It's published by nation, by state, as well as for over 650 metropolitan and non-metropolitan areas. It's an extremely useful resource for career planning, perhaps examining where jobs are more prevalent, or also understanding what I should be earning in a particular position. This should be helpful when negotiating salaries when positions do arise. Wanted to mention that. Here's my contact information, and I'd be remiss if I didn't try to kind of sum up what's important, takeaways from the presentation, because you take away 10% of what you hear. That's the old adage. BLS employment projections are developed every 2 years using expected demand models. The fastest growing industry sector by far is healthcare and social assistance, and this area will add the most new jobs of any sector over the projections period. Due to the impact of baby boomers, we expect both high growth in healthcare occupations, including healthcare practitioners and technical jobs and healthcare support occupations, and we do see expected losses in the manufacturing sector for various reasons that were noted, although we do expect the decline to slow over the projections period. And there are many resources outside of the projections available from the Bureau that you should be armed with and knowledgeable about, including the available wage and employment data by occupation from the Occupational Employment Statistics Program, as well as the Occupational Outlook Handbook and the Career Outlook resources. So, please note those summary points. And, there's our contact information. We are based in Boston at the JFK Federal Building. I'm staffed with 2 economists. Should be staffed with 2, but right now we're kind of operating with one arm tied behind our back. That's our contact information, and the phone number is there a public line and our public email, and we'll respond to you within a timely basis between Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Alexandra. I thank you for your time and hope you have a better understanding of our career and employment projections data.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tim. I know this was a lot for folks, but it really gave everyone a taste of the resources and projections that you have to offer, and hopefully people feel invited and compelled to check out your website and zero in on some more specific data for their particular fields and occupations. So I think that's excellent. We in the Hiatt Career Center frequently use the Occupational Outlook Handbook with our both students and alumni in career counseling appointments, especially for that career exploration. If you're just beginning a career or if you're thinking about making a switch, to really get a broad strokes overview of the skills required and how to launch a career in a certain field. So that specifically, I can attest to how helpful that resource is. So we do have several questions from folks. If you are open to staying on the line for a few more minutes, Tim.
Certainly, sure.
Okay, so you did mention that the projections are released every 2 years, and so these were 2016 to 2026. When would the 2018 ones be released?
December 2019.
Okay, great. Another question was in regards to recessions. So as you're looking at the 10-year projections for the coming decade, why do you predict that jobs will keep going up, generally speaking, when we are likely due for a recession in the near future? And how do you account for that?
So that's an excellent question. So these are projections based on current trends. And if I go back to one of the earlier slides, we want to convey that we cannot predict variability in the business cycle. And so based on the current trends, with our expectations in demand across industries, we do adjust the figures based on prices, wages, and productivity, which we also measure in the Bureau. To project that level of employment, we just cannot project the variations in the business cycle, which may occur, which you saw in December 2007 to 2009. So these are projections based on current events.
Totally makes sense. Thank you. This may not be something that you track, but just out of curiosity, so you track employment growth and also salary information by occupation. Do you also take into account benefits that go beyond compensation for certain occupational sectors?
Yes, we do. We sponsor the National Compensation Survey, which is a survey of employers. It's approximately, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's basically a sample-based survey of establishments that tracks compensation, including wages and salaries paid to employees and benefits. So we're parsing out costs to employers for employee compensation that covers the benefits portion. So you can get a metrics to show what the average pay is in terms of wages and salaries versus benefits to employees from that program.
Oh, really interesting. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
Obviously, that's an important thing to take into account beyond just base salary when you're considering career options. So tell me, we've got a few questions about this actually, about how artificial intelligence and robotics and computer software are replacing workers. And so you talked about productivity being another factor that could factor into employment projections. Are you taking technology and the replacement of physical workers into account when you're doing your projections?
I believe that's the approach. And again, we do have productivity. We have a productivity program, which is measuring labor and capital in the production of outputs by industry, and we see certain changes. And it's evident from the slides. The program that produces the slides is outside of Boston. It's actually based in Washington, D.C. And I could definitely refer you to maybe some articles that's produced by that program that touches on what specifically is going on, especially within manufacturing, that's leading to our projections. And that just is intuitive that, if you have an iRobot that is mopping the floor, it's just going to reduce the need for, manual power to produce that service.
Absolutely. And we saw that, in the sharp decrease in typists and word processors and some of the other occupations that you mentioned on the slides as well.
Good
Question.
Point. Yeah.
Question regarding the salary and jobs data that you had listed based on education required. Is that further broken down by major or course of study anywhere on your website, or is it just by degree or length of education?
I don't believe you have any finer level of detail beyond the educational categories that we have there. In terms of like master's degree, bachelor's degree, post-secondary, I don't think we parse that out across like different disciplines.
Okay.
But I can certainly follow up and verify, but I'm more than certain that would be the finest level of breakout.
Great. Thank you. I think that is it for questions. Really great questions and great answers, Tim. So I appreciate it.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, we in the regions kind of function as generalists, so we can refer you to the technical experts if you really have a burning desire to know, about certain issues, and we can filter you to the right folks. But I can definitely follow up with you on these couple of questions there.
Wonderful. So any final thoughts, Tim, before we move on to our final slide?
No, I again appreciate your time. Everyone's busy. I hope, this was a value-added experience where you have some references and some feedback on our growth figures and our resources for making good career decisions in the economy. So thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you for sharing all these valuable resources with Brandeis alumni. I hope you all will take a further look at the BLS website and delve a little deeper into the data as it relates to your chosen or interested field. Going forward, if you could just advance to the next slide for me. Please take a moment when you get our follow-up email tomorrow to fill out our satisfaction survey and let us know how we did. We choose different webinar topics and presenters every month during the academic year, open to the full Brandeis community. So we really do take into account your feedback and the topics that you want to learn about. I also want to invite you to our May webinar, which will be the last of the year before starting back up in September. And Tim had mentioned a few times the gig economy and working for yourself. And that's what our panel of freelance experts will be focusing on May 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern. They'll be talking about how to decide when or if you should make the leap from a full-time career to a freelance career. So you'll get the link to that as well in our follow-up email. We also offer career appointments with our career counselors here in the Hiatt Career Center for undergraduate students and alumni. And so if you have any career questions and follow-up that you'd like to discuss with a career counselor, please get in touch with us. My contact information is on the screen. And just another plug also to use each other as resources. Brandeis alumni are tremendous resources, and you are employed in every single industry all around the world. So use each other as a resource, and you can find a place to connect. Specifically on LinkedIn, we manage the Brandeis University Career Connections group. So thank you again to Tim Consedine and to the Bureau of Labor Statistics for sharing him with us today. And I hope you all enjoy the presentation and that you'll join us back in May. Thanks so much.